It's a great radio for the money, but if you are trying to use Flysky or Spektrum, not so great.
Oh my goodness, that was very close to tree. Very close to tree. I'm not going to fly very far out here, because that is danger, danger, danger. But I mean, I'm loving the feel of these sticks though. The throttle I would say is almost too loose, and I like a loose throttle. Loose meaning very little throttle friction. So they did a good job on that. And the sticks generally are kind of a little bit softer. There's not as much there's not a ton of spring tension on the sticks, which I actually like. There I am. Hello. Can I get in a shot here? Maybe not. A little bit of prop wash there. Right now I'm flying the Nazgul 5140 propellers. And they're a little beat up. Tell you what, man, flying without a GoPro is a night and day difference. I just feel so free and agile. I feel like a spring chicken without the GoPro on. Okay, that was a little bit of inadvertent yaw there, which is partially me getting used to the transmitter, but then also partially my fingers are cold. So basically, the longer I fly, generally kind of the worse it gets because my fingers are cold. That's a fun move. Pardon me. That's a fun move, right there. The kind of the sort of like a halfway. What do they call that? It's almost like an aerial, I think is what they call it. It's like a half flip, half twist. But if you do it right, it's kind of like in slow motion, which I think is pretty cool.
Hey everybody, welcome back to RC with Adam. My name is Adam. So glad you could be back here with me today. We are looking at the RadioMaster TX12 radio sent to me by Banggood. Thank you, Banggood. And what I'm going to do today is this is going to be like a review, but I'm not going to do like a super in-depth detailed nitty-gritty type review because I think like all the reviewers have already reviewed this thing. What I want to do is talk about the external features of the radio and actually how it feels like in my hands and what I think about it, my perspective on it. And we will compare it to some Flysky radios as well because, you know, I'm kind of the Flysky guy, and that is kind of the one downside of this radio, which we'll talk about in just a second. So first, let's just talk about some specs just to get this out of the way. It could be considered a mini-sized radio. It's quite small. That's one of the reasons why I actually wanted to review it. In terms of the switches, it has 4 3-position switches, 2 on the top face and then 2 sort of facing outward. And then it has 2 buttons as well, and it has 2 slider like potentiometers. This uses OpenTX, which is an open source firmware for your radio. And it is a multi-protocol, as it says right there in big letters on the front, OpenTX multi. So this is a multi-protocol radio. That is one of the big selling points of this radio. The downside, and this is the big downside, is that it doesn't, or for me anyway, it doesn't use Flysky. It can't do Flysky protocols. So it also can't do Spektrum protocols. So it has the CC2500 multi-protocol chip in there instead of the other one, which I can't think of the name of at the moment, which would support Flysky and Spektrum, I think and Spektrum. Anyway, so that's the downside for me. So basically, bottom line, here it is. This is a great radio, and I would switch to this in a second if I could actually, you know, just easily bind my Flysky receivers to this. Now, It does have a module bay in the back right in here, and it has a cover, but I've been using a module. And so you can plug in your Crossfire or other types of modules, or like a Flysky. I mean, any type of module that goes in the back with the 5 pins, you can plug that in there. I've been using this CE FM30 module and testing that out with the receiver, and you just stick it in there and make sure all the pins line up. Kind of gently wiggle it in. So that's what I've been using. So I really haven't even been using this radio with the any of the internal protocols that it comes with. You know, if you're going to be using a like a sort of a long range type of radio setup where you're going to be using a module anyway, then it doesn't really matter what the radio actually comes with. And that's kind of my point for this review, is that you know, we can turn the radio on here and look at the menu and stuff, but it has OpenTX, which is going to be pretty much the same as every other radio with OpenTX. And nowadays, you know, the radios, and because we have module bays and external transmitter modules, it doesn't really matter so much in terms of the actual protocol of the radio or like the range of the stock radio. What really matters is the form factor and the ergonomics and the fit and the finish and the feel and all that sort of stuff. So that's what we're going to talk about right now. So I've been flying this thing a good bit, and I have not flown any fixed wing stuff. I'll just let you know. Really just flying my budget basher. Pretty much that's it. The 5-inch freestyle quad. So I haven't done a whole lot in terms of like trying to use up all the switches or anything like that. But the way I like to hold the radio is like a sort of a modified, or I guess you call it a hybrid pinch grip. So I put my thumbs on the top of the sticks, but I also use my first fingers to sort of as like a secondary guide on the sticks. So that's just what I kind of started doing. I used to just do thumbs, and you know, that works okay sometimes. I mean, it works fine for some people. It's just a personal preference. But yeah, so I hold it like this. So that requires, I kind of have to hold the radio, like, kind of have to, what would you call it? Like a sort of claw the radio, sort of. It's not like I'm gripping it like what these little grips on the back are sort of made for. So it's more of like I'm pretty much supporting it on my pinkies. For me, I have somewhat, maybe slightly above average size hands. And so for me, if I'm trying to grip the radio how I normally grip it, I find that these sliders tend to get bumped by my fingers, and that could be really bad depending on, you know, what you're flying. If you have the sliders set up as something, right now these don't do anything. This one, I can't remember if I set it to do this, but it will beep and vibrate when it is in the center position. But I find that these sliders, there's just not a whole lot of friction, and they seem like the precision is not super great. So yeah, I'm not really a big fan of those, mostly because they just get in the way. The other thing that is kind of weird, at least for me coming from my Flysky radios, is the switch positions, or the switch placement, because since you have 2 switches pointing outward and then 2 switches pointing up, it can be kind of confusing in terms of like what is the sort of down or off position of all the switches, or at least for me, because of how I set up the switches on my other radio, it can be kind of confusing. And what I think makes sense is if I have the 2 top switches in the downward position, to me that's kind of like the off position, and then the 2 forward switches, well, sort of in the up position would be off, and then I flip it down to turn it on. I know that seems backwards, but that's the thing. That's one of the trickiest things that I've had to get used to with this radio. Speaking of the top area, up here we do have the trainer port for the trainer cable, which I'm not sure what type of cable that you would need to connect to another transmitter. But it does not come with whatever type you would need. It might just be like an aux cable, I'm not sure. And then it does have a USB port, which is really nice, a USB-C. And I really like that they put it on the top of the radio. because when you're using this on a simulator, on your computer, you can have the radio sitting on your desk or in your lap, and then you can have the USB-C cable come from your computer to the top of the radio, instead of having to come around and kind of wrap around to the bottom of the radio or the back of the radio, where it ends up getting in the way and you can't like set the radio down. So I do like that. I think that's a nice feature. In terms of the other buttons here on the face of the transmitter, you have your normal physical trim switches right here, and then you have your button layout, which is pretty consistent. It should be very familiar if you have other RadioMaster TX16 radios and the like. You got your system button, model button, return, page forward, page backward, and telemetry. And then you have this metal roller, which I really like. This is like one of the best things about this radio. It just makes it so easy to go through all of the different settings. Normally, with the OpenTX stuff, you could have it give you audio alerts, like a little voice that says like, "Welcome to OpenTX," or something like that. But this one did not come with that set up, and I haven't set that up yet. But you can add it because there is a SD card port in the bottom here. And actually, let's take out this battery tray, get this out of the way, and we'll talk about the battery. So this is powered off of can be powered off of two 18650 lithium ion batteries. I have two 3000 milliamp hour batteries, which I have not tested it, but it should last a very long time, just like that. And there's our SD card slot right down in there. And another thing about the charging is you can just charge it directly from the USB-C. So that's really convenient, because then, you bring your charger back in from flying, and then you just plug it into the USB-C. Same thing, how you would charge your phone or maybe your goggles or whatever else. And it's really convenient that way. So it does not come with batteries, but it does come with the battery tray for the 18650s. And that just plugs into a little balance lead. If I can get it out here, yeah, just a little two-cell balance lead connector. And so you could actually use a 2S lithium battery as well, or lithium polymer battery, like this one that I have here, which is a 2800 milliamp hour. And you could plug it in right in there and power the transmitter on, just to show you that it does work. And it will only fit a two-cell battery balance lead, and so that's because the actual working voltage is from 6.6 volts to 8.4 volts. So you wouldn't want to put a 4-cell battery in there or something. Overall, the fit and finish of this radio is actually very impressive for the price range. And I probably should have mentioned that one of the big selling points of this radio is that it is sub $100. Right now, it's like, I think, around $70. And in some cases cheaper. So yeah, like it's a great radio for the money. But if you are trying to use Flysky or Spektrum, not so great. Oh, and in case I forgot to mention, it does have this very nice folding handle, which I actually like quite a bit. Sort of snaps into place. So it does make it quite compact. And speaking of the size, let's go ahead and compare this to a few other radios. So let's take a look at this. This is the Flysky FS-i6, same size as the i6X, and man, I'll tell you what, the difference is quite staggering. So, and I show you this just to give you a sense, because this is typically what I fly on. Actually, not this one, but actually this one, which is pretty similar in size. This is the i6S right here. And so with I'll tell you what, going back to this one, it's like, it makes the stick travel seems huge, like the throws of the sticks, really pretty darn crazy. Because this little guy, like, it's almost too small. The TX12 is almost too small. I don't really seem to have any problem in terms of like, well, aside from the sliders, I don't really bump any switches or anything. And I don't really feel like my hands get cramped when I'm moving them around. I will say it does feel a little slippery at times, especially like in cold weather. The i6 is way wider. It's hard to tell on the camera because when I cover it up, one is closer to the camera, but basically there's a big old difference. Now I will say the Flysky is thinner. I think the actual body of the transmitter is a little bit thinner, but you do have this fixed handle that also holds the antenna. So that's kind of a little bit of weirdness there. Now, in terms of the switches, this is what I was talking about. Like, one thing that I like about the Flysky stuff is that all the switches are on the very top of the transmitter. And then you have these two knobs in the middle, which is kind of nice because then they're kind of like out of the way. And because, I mean, I hardly ever use them for like almost anything. So I kind of like that. Plus, they have a really good feel to them, like a pretty good amount of tension, pretty smooth. So yeah, that's definitely something. It's thinner, so it is kind of easier for me to grasp when I'm doing kind of my hybrid pinchy grip. And then let's see here, and then the i6s, pretty much the same situation. You got the 4 switches on the top. This one's actually, well, it does have this handle that sticks out in the back. In terms of thickness, it's pretty similar. Still pretty, say it's still a little bit thinner. But notice here, this is the most important thing. Notice the difference in the width, like the distance between the gimbals. Big difference there. Big difference on the distance between the gimbals. And so that's gonna be a factor in, well, to some degree, sort of the throws, but then also just kind of how much room there is for your hands to sort of like stretch out, I guess. So with the TX12, you're all kind of in tight right there with your hands, and on the i6s, it's a bit more spread out. I mean, you got this big old area there. So I don't know. I guess if you were using gloves, that would be better. I mean, I realize it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to compare the i6s to the TX12 because I mean, aside, like, if you didn't have to use Flysky protocol, then you should just go with the TX12, like, absolutely, for sure. Especially since I think the i6s is like almost $70, I think, which is just too much. I don't really love the i6s, but I do actually sort of fly it quite a bit, kind of just because I have it. But same deal with the i6, the distance between the actual sticks. Got a little ruler here, 4 1/8 inches on the i6, and right about straight up 3 inches on the TX12. And for more size comparison, here's the old Spektrum DX6i. I don't know if anybody like really uses this anymore. If you do, leave me a comment. But this thing is absolutely gymongous. It is just ridiculous. I guess it's back when they made like the bigger the transmitter you had, the cooler you were. I guess maybe that's still the case. I don't know. But yeah, ridiculously large. I don't know. Again, on camera, it's hard to really tell the difference. That gives you a pretty good shot right there. So yeah, just a big difference compared to like a sort of like full size radio. And I think the Flysky radios are actually quite small. So there's a little bit of size difference there for you. A little bit of difference on the width. Actually, the width is, well, yeah, it's definitely wider. So anyway, just to give you an idea, because you might be familiar with the DX6i. To wrap things up, the RadioMaster TX12, I think, is a really overall a fantastic radio for the price. I mean, yeah, it's a fantastic radio. The only thing is, if you want a radio that is compatible with Flysky or Spektrum and maybe a few other brands of receivers, then this is not the radio for you. But you potentially could add a module bay that is for a multi-protocol module bay, or a multi-protocol module. Or I'm thinking about maybe just going in here and modifying some things, maybe installing a chip or something. And you could make it work that way. Well, there you go, folks. I hope this was helpful to you. Maybe you were wondering about the TX12 and how it's sort of with the features and the ergonomics and stuff of it. Hopefully I helped you with that. If you have any questions or comments about this, leave them in the comments down below. And hopefully I or someone else will be able to help you. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I will see you again very soon.
Now let's get out of here. Let's just do some nice little flying around. Super gentle, like little angel in the sky. Let's see how this does with some detailed movements.